If you like the following story, subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Also, check out the description for a link to our children's books.
Chapter 6 of the Count of Monte Cristo for kids, in which our hero discovers that prison can be rather like a very strict boarding school, though with considerably less recess. There are many ways to pass time in prison. Some prisoners count stones, though we've already established how that turned out. Some talk to mice, who are, as it happens, terrible conversationalists, and some make elaborate plans involving bed sheets and conveniently placed windows. We will now discuss more about the education that Edmond Dantes was getting in prison. Today, Abe would announce each morning, adjusting his makeshift spectacles with the air of a professor at a very distinguished university, which this most certainly was not. "We shall learn something magnificent." He said this every single day, and somehow he was always right. Their classroom was admittedly lacking certain traditional school features. There were no desks, no chalkboards, and definitely no school bell, unless you counted the prison guards' rather aggressive way of announcing mealtime. But what they lacked in facilities, they made up for in enthusiasm. "Spanish!" Abe would declare one day, teaching Edmond to roll his R's until the guards thought he was growling at them. "Mathematics!" he'd announce the next, drawing equations in the dust that made Edmund's head spin. More than that time he'd tried to navigate his ship through a particularly energetic storm. Philosophy, though this usually led to conversations so deep they made the prison walls seem shallow by comparison. Some days they would fence with broomsticks, which was rather like real fencing, except with more splinters and considerably less elegance. Abe would demonstrate the proper way to parry and thrust, occasionally getting so carried away that he'd act out entire scenes from famous duels. The guards, we should note, found this particularly puzzling, especially when Abe insisted on playing both parts of the duel himself. But it wasn't all sword fights and conjugating verbs. Between lessons, Abe taught Edmund something far more valuable than any language or science. He taught him how to think. "You see," Abe would say, usually while drawing elaborate diagrams in the dust with his finger, "knowledge isn't just about knowing things, it's about understanding them. Like why the stars move across the sky, or why people do the things they do, or why prison food tastes exactly like old boots." Though I am not sure how Abe knew what old boots tasted like. Gradually, Edmund found himself changing. The angry young sailor who had arrived at Chateau d'If began to disappear, replaced by someone who could quote Latin, even if his pronunciation made Abe wince, calculate the trajectory of an escape tunnel, though their attempts at actually digging one remained remarkably unsuccessful, and discuss the great philosophers, even if he sometimes mixed up Plato with Aristotle, much to Abe's dismay. "But what good is all this learning?" Edmund asked one day, after a particularly challenging lesson in Greek, which it turned out was even more difficult when you had to scratch the letters in dirt. "We're still in prison." Abe smiled, that particular smile that always meant wisdom was about to be dispensed. "My dear boy, education is never wasted. It's the one treasure no one can steal from you, even if they lock you in the gloomiest prison in France." And given that they were, in fact, locked in the gloomiest prison in France, this was saying something. And so the days passed, filled with languages and numbers, history and science, philosophy, and the occasional dramatic reenactment of famous battles using dust bunnies as soldiers. What Edmund didn't realize was that all this learning wasn't just filling his head with knowledge. It was preparing him for an adventure far greater than any he could imagine. But that, dear reader, is a story for another chapter.
Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Also, check out the description for a link to our children's books.